I walked into Granddad's hospital room and saw him hitting a rectangular device with smoke rising from his mouth. I ran over in horror and gasped because Granddad had a giant smile on his face. I ripped it from him. "How many did you take?" "Like 4. The nurse left it here and told me to have some." I gripped my head in horror because how could a nurse do that? Granddad's eyes were already red as he ran his hands over his hospital gown. "Wow, I can really feel everything. This medicine is amazing." I told him to calm down, but he was already licking his lips. "I'm really hungry though." He gripped his railing and suddenly stood up for the first time in 6 months. My eyes widened as my horror turned to amazement. "You're standing, Granddad!" But he wasn't even responding and just walked towards his hospital roommate, who was eating his tray of food in his own bed. I realized what Granddad was doing and reached for him. "Granddad, no!" But he was already picking the mashed potatoes out of his roommate's tray with his hands. "I've never tasted mashed potatoes so good." He smiled and picked more. His roommate was delirious and barely noticed him, and I dragged Granddad back to his bed and slammed the nurse button, having no idea what to even think. But when I turned around, Granddad was again hitting the pendulum. I took it from him, and he dropped to the floor, his eyes deep red as he hysterically laughed at the ceiling. The nurse ran in, and her mouth flung open immediately. I raised the pendulum at her. "This is your fault. How could you give it to him and tell him to take some?" My voice shook, but the nurse frantically shook her head. "That's not mine. I told him to take his medicine." She pointed at the still full cup of pills Granddad had knocked over in his hysteria. My brain rattled as I stared at the pendulum while Granddad's laughter filled the air. Then where did this come from? Me and the nurse looked at each other, and that's when Granddad's roommate slowly raised his head from his tray of mashed potatoes, his eyes glowing red with a goofy smile. I knew I'd left it somewhere. He started laughing just as hard as my Granddad. My brother grabbed my hand and pulled. "Come on, dude, we're right here. You said you wanted to make friends." I stood outside the frat house while the music blared, my legs planted into the ground because I was too nervous to go inside even though I wanted to. "I'll stay out here, man." My voice shook. "But you go inside." My brother came over and hugged me. "Listen, man, there's too many baddies in there for me not to go in. Take a few minutes and come in when you're ready." He turned and walked in shouting, while I stood there gripping my jacket, feeling like a loser who's never going to have friends. I was going to just walk home because I'd failed again, but then I saw a man in a ski mask and a gun creeping around the side of the house. I instantly hid in the bush, my heart pounding, as he looked around the yard I was just standing in. Nobody was there, so he loaded his pistol and slipped in through the front doors. My whole body froze as I watched him raise his pistol in the hallway. He fired a round into the ceiling, and everyone instantly screamed. He yelled, "Everyone against the wall," but then my brother stepped towards him. "Hey man, we're not scared," but the man immediately fired again. The bullet hit the glass bottle in my brother's hand, shattering it and cutting him. I watched my brother go pale and back up against the wall while the man laughed. "You're scared now, aren't you?" He raised his pistol at everyone, and that's when I stepped out of the bush. My stomach screamed, "Turn back," but my legs were already moving. The armed man ripped his mask off. "Nobody here wanted to invite me, so now everyone here is going to pay." His gun landed on my trembling brother first. "Mr. Not Scared here goes first." I watched him cock the trigger, but I was already at the porch steps, sprinting with everything I had. His back came within reach, and my feet left the ground as he placed his finger on the trigger. I tackled him before he could squeeze. The gun slid across the floor as people instantly started restraining him and beating him. I stood up hyperventilating, and my brother instantly pulled me into a hug. "You're a hero!" someone shouted. My brother lifted me on his shoulder as the whole party chanted my name. I was organizing my Pokemon cards when my girlfriend picked up my childhood Charizard and dangled it like it disgusted her. "You're a grown man. Why are you still playing with kids' toys?" I snatched it back before she could bend it. "I pulled this when I was 7, and collectors still offer me stupid money for it." She trailed after me, waving at all my cards. "It's embarrassing. Just get rid of it before somebody comes over." I slipped it into my pocket where she couldn't reach it. "I'm never selling this one." The next morning, she stood over my shelf with her coffee. "It's a pile of useless garbage and you know it." I ran my thumb over the binder. "This got me through the worst year of my childhood." That afternoon, I caught her flicking my cards into a bag while she watched my face. On Friday, she pointed me out to her friends across the living room. "I swear he still collects Pokemon cards like a little boy." My face went hot while they laughed, but I kept my hand pressed over the Charizard in my pocket where it had been all week. Monday, my phone buzzed with a text from my buddy at the card shop. "Yo, isn't this your whole collection?" She dumped it all online for $40, and my hands went cold. I called him before I even stood up. "Buy it all back right now before someone else grabs it." I came home to an empty shelf, but she didn't even turn around. "Relax, you needed to grow up anyway." I nodded and let her think she'd won. The next morning, I told her she was right. It's about time I grew up and sold this kid stuff. She practically skipped to the shop with me. I laid my Charizard on the counter, and my buddy turned it over in his hands. "This one's worth about 9 grand. She stood there with her mouth hanging open while he counted it out. She reached for the cash, but I zipped it into my jacket. That's the deposit on my own place. She grabbed my arm as I turned for the door. I really thought you'd never sell that card. So did I. But it just saved me from this relationship. I walked out while she stood there with her hand still open. I was watching a movie with my best friend when he shifted on his couch and said, "Oops, I pooped my pants." I choked on my soda and whipped around to face him. "What are you talking about? There's no way you actually pooped your pants in your living room." He shrugged like I'd asked him about the weather. "I pooped my pants, man. It happens. It happens." I pulled my feet up and pressed myself into the armrest. "Why would you do that?" He raised one finger like a teacher explaining something simple. "I was aiming for the toilet seat." I threw my arms out at the TV and the carpet. "Dude, we're in your living room. There is no toilet seat in here." But that's when he slowly raised his hand and pointed right under me. I turned my head downwards. There was a toilet seat on the sofa cushion under me. It had been there the whole time, and I'd watched the entire movie sitting on it without noticing. My whole body went cold as everything clicked. Turns out, he really did poop himself in his own living room. I jumped away, but he stood up, patted the seat, and said, "Finally, now I won't miss." I was doing squats at 4 a.m. to stay awake, because a kid at school had told me, "You grow taller if you never sleep." I was already on night 3. I marked my height on the doorframe to measure my growth, but my heart sank when the new line came out dead, even with night 1. So I whispered, "I won't accept being short." I dragged myself to the window for air, and my whole body went cold when I saw a boy in my school's hoodie under the streetlight, staring up at me. I screamed at him, "Wait, you look taller than me. Tell me what's your secret." But he started walking, and by the time I ran out my door, he was already at the end of the street. So I sprinted until my chest was burning and the streetlights smeared together. But the gap between us just kept getting bigger. Sweat ran into my eyes, so I blinked. But when I opened them back up, the boy was standing on the curb in front of me. My hands started shaking. My eyelids slammed shut on their own again, and when they opened, his hood was an inch away from my face. I heard him say, "Don't blink, you're almost there." I grabbed his hood and yanked him around, and my jaw dropped because his face was gray and he had the same black circles under his eyes as me. That's when I looked down at his shoes, and they were floating an inch above the road. "What night are you on?" he asked, and my throat locked up so tight I barely got out. "3. I'm on 400, he said, and his hand clamped around my wrist until my fingers went numb. I ripped my arm loose and ran back towards my house, and I didn't stop until I slammed my front door behind me. I dove into my bed, dragged the blanket over my head, and squeezed my eyes shut. I'm going to sleep. I'd rather be short. In the morning, I checked the door frame. A fresh pencil mark sat a full head above mine, with night 400 under it in handwriting that wasn't mine. When the doctor told me I had lung cancer and a less 5% chance of survival, I wanted nothing more than for my wife to hold me. But when I drove home and told her, she went quiet before standing up and saying, "I'm sorry, I can't do this." She walked out of the house, and I sat there shell-shocked. I went to call her and ask if she was serious, but she'd already blocked my number. I spent the next week getting sick in the bathroom all alone when suddenly my doorbell rang. I opened it with the taste of vomit still in my mouth and saw a man in a suit. "I'm representing your wife in the divorce." He gave me divorce papers, and as I looked through, I realized my wife wanted the house, the car, and all our savings, arguing she needed them more anyway. I cried all night, trying to accept I was going to die, but then I saw my wife kissing another man on social media and decided to fight. But during my first chemo session, my wife walked in with her lawyer. She slid a pen and papers. "I just need you to sign this, honey. Easier to do it now than when you're too weak to lift the pen." It was the first time I'd seen her since. I went home feeling nauseous, but when I twisted the key, it wouldn't work. That's when my wife looked out from the upstairs window. "This house is technically in my name. I changed the locks." She threw boxes of my things outside the window. I cried and yelled, "I'm sick. I have nowhere to go." But she just shrugged. "That's not my problem." I walked to a homeless shelter with as many boxes as I could, throwing up along the way, and when court came around, I was in chemo going bald. She took everything and left me to die, but I didn't. My numbers climbed, and I kept a picture of her beside me at every chemo session. Because I hated her so much, I wanted to live just to spite her. 2 years later, I was cancer-free and got the keys to my own apartment. It was tiny and crammed, but I'd made it. But 3 months later, I came home and saw her in my apartment, hanging photos of us on the walls like she lived here. She smiled at me and my stomach turned. "I've been thinking, we should try again." I didn't even know what to say, but she brought her face inches to mine. "My new husband cheated on me and I have nowhere to go. I know I made mistakes, but everyone deserves a second chance." She leaned to kiss me, and I instantly backed away. "Are you insane? Get out." I ushered her out the door. She broke down crying, "You can't kick me out when I'm at my lowest." But I laughed. "That's literally what you did." Her jaw dropped as I slammed the door and took down all the photos. I hope she gets cancer. I was in the middle of an epic Nerf war with my friends when I missed a shot and nailed our old neighbor right in the arm. She dropped to the floor and shrieked like she'd been hit by a real bullet, and my friends froze. But this lady has been dramatic my whole life, so I just shrugged and kept firing. But then, out of nowhere, 5 cop cars screeched up to us, and a wall of officers poured out, pointing their weapons straight at us. My friends dropped their blasters. I put my hands up, my heart pounding, not knowing how crazy things would get. I yelled, "Officers, what did we do? You're all under arrest for a reported gunfight," an officer barked, yanking my arms behind my back. I couldn't believe it. A gunfight? These are Nerf guns. They're toys. But he shook his head. Kids say anything these days. We don't want the next school shooter. Then the old lady came stumbling off her porch, clutching her arm like it had been blown off, screaming, "Get them, officers! They shot me! They shot me in the arm!" The officer's face hardened. Add assault with a weapon. I didn't want to go to jail, so I reached down to grab my blaster and show him the foam. But the second I moved, they screamed, "He's grabbing his weapon," and slammed me face first into the grass. My friend yelled, "Oh no, look!" I looked up to see SWAT trucks screeching around the corner, armored men swarming my yard like we were terrorists. I couldn't understand how a foam dart caused all this. Then a decorated army general stormed through them all, his face red with fury, and pointed right at us. "Get those hooligans! They shot my mother!" I cried in the grass, convinced my friends and I would be jailed for life. But then the general marched to the ambulance where they were treating his mother's wound. An EMT looked up, confused. Sir, there's no wound here, just a red dot and a piece of foam." The general snatched the foam dart, stared at it, then at his mother, and his fury melted into pure embarrassment. "Mom, are you serious? You called SWAT over a toy. You're embarrassing me, Mom." The cops who held me and my friends stood frozen, finally looking at the plastic guns on the ground, my friends trying not to laugh. He yelled, "Do not call me again for the SWAT. I won't come." The cops finally uncuffed us, and the next day, we were finishing our Nerf match, and I spun around and drilled her right in the forehead. I swung my mop and smacked the homeless man in the head. "Get away from this bench." This was my first job ever, and my manager Gary was watching through the store window with his arms crossed, because his one rule was, nobody sits on that bench. But the homeless guy didn't run, and my jaw dropped when he sat right back down. Then he checked a watch, way too expensive for a guy who sleeps on benches. I grit my teeth because he was destroying my number of homeless people deterred. I jabbed the mop in his face, but he leaned out of the way without looking up. So I grabbed his arm and pulled with everything I had, but he still didn't move an inch, like he was bolted to the bench. Gary banged on the glass, mouthing, "Hit him again," and I needed this job. So even though my hands were shaking, I choked up on the mop like a baseball bat and wound up the biggest swing of my life. I swung hard, but that's when the homeless guy caught the mop mid-swing with one hand, like he was Superman. He looked me in the eye, and my whole body went cold as he stood up. He was way taller than he looked, and he walked me backwards towards our store while I stammered apologies. Gary sprinted out screaming and stopped dead, because the homeless man said his full name. "Gary Huckle, your employee just smacked the owner of this store in the head." My soul left my body. "But you look genuinely homeless. It's not my fault." He ripped the mop out of my hands and smacked both Gary and me in the head. "You're both fired." Me and my idiot best friend Dayon rubbed each other in Vaseline at 7:52 a.m. because we were going to be late to work. There were no buses running, and even though we were 40 years old, neither of us had our driver's license yet. I turned to him. "This is going to work. All we have to do is slide down the road and get to work on time. Otherwise, we're going to be fired." Dayan was already laying on his belly and putting on his game face. In just seconds, we were gliding down the street like two idiot penguins on ice. Dayan and I started cheering with both our mouths wide open because it looked like we were actually going to make it on time, until I looked up and saw a pile of dog poop the size of a beanbag chair. I screamed, "Watch out!" and we both grabbed at a street pole to stop ourselves from gliding into it. But the Vaseline was so slippy, we slid off the pole, and we both landed right into the dog poop, mouths first. My mouth watered in disgust because it was in my teeth. It was in Dayan's hair, everywhere. I instantly stood up, spitting in disgust. Dayan wiped his eyes with his one clean knuckle. "We're screwed." I looked up to see if there was a bathroom nearby, but then I saw we were right in front of our work, and my watch said it was 7:58 a.m. I shook poop off my right hand and helped Dayan up. "If we don't walk in now, we're fired anyway." So we pushed inside and punched the clock 1 minute early. When our boss came out of his office, he froze, and I expected him to fire us. His eyes widened. "What the?" Dayan wiped his mouth and spoke quickly. The bus never came, so we greased up and slid here, and it was great until we ran into dog poop. But sir, we're on time." He stared at us for a long time, then his face went soft. "Everyone upstairs told me to fire you both 2 months ago because they told me you weren't committed to the job." He pointed at the brown trail we'd dragged across his floor. "But this is the most committed thing I have ever seen." He smiled. "I knew I was right. You're not uncommitted, you're just idiots. But you both make this job a nicer place to be in, so I'm never firing you." I stood there covered in dog poop, feeling more appreciated than I ever had in my life. Dayon put his hand up for a high five, but our hands slid right off each other. My dad stood over my bed. "You can skip school today if you come to work with me instead." 5-year-old me instantly jumped out of bed, even though I had no idea what my dad's job was. Yes, yes, yes. He passed me a ski mask, and I followed him to the car with no idea what to expect. We drove past houses, and I pointed at the boarded-up windows. "Where are we going, Daddy?" He spoke through gritted teeth. "Don't ask me any more questions, son." Beads of sweat came down my face, but I nodded because I didn't want my dad to be mad at me. He parked behind a house with cages on the windows, and when we got out, he pulled a huge black duffel bag out of the trunk. He hung the strap over my shoulder. "I need you to knock and give this to them, son. I can't be seen here. This job's better for you anyway." My knees were trembling, and I didn't want to do it anymore. But before I could say anything, my dad was already watching from behind the corner, so I dragged the duffel bag up the stairs. When I knocked, the biggest man I'd ever seen opened the door. I waved. "My daddy has this delivery for you. He's around the corner." He unzipped the bag without a word and stared inside. "Is that it?" My heart started pounding with adrenaline because he was staring at me with daggers in his eyes. He immediately grabbed his phone to dial 911, and I felt my dad's hand closed around my arm. "Run, buddy, as fast as you can. Now!" My dad was sprinting down the block, so I followed him while my ankles ached. "Why are we running, Daddy?" He didn't answer, and the sirens behind us kept getting louder. Ahead was an alley, skinny and dark. He stopped running. He turned around and ran towards me. "I'm sorry, son. I love you. I want you to remember that grown-ups sometimes do bad things, but it's never their children's fault." I wanted to ask what he meant, but he ran down the alley as the cop cars pulled up. An officer held me tight with tears in his eyes. "You shouldn't have had to go through that. I'm sorry, but I just wanted to know where my daddy was." My dad shook me awake at 4 a.m. on a school night, frantically telling me to get out of bed and come to the living room right now. I shot up still half asleep, but Dad was already bolting downstairs. I followed him, my heart pounding because this felt wrong. Dad sat me in a chair and pulled me to the TV. Mortal Kombat was loaded up. "I finally unlocked all the characters, son. I really want to play with you using them." He tossed me a controller with the widest grin and sat next to me, but I groaned because he'd made me believe something was wrong. "I have school tomorrow, Dad. I need to sleep." I put the controller down and stood up, but then he put his hand on my shoulder. "You're not going to school, kid. You're playing Mortal Kombat with me." My face lit up, and before I could respond, Dad pulled 2 pizza boxes and lemonade from behind the couch. "So what do you say? School or fun with your dad?" I instantly plopped down and grabbed my controller while he loaded up the game, smiling. I used every character he unlocked, and when the sun came up and the school bus drove by our house, me and Dad were still playing. The only danger around was having too much fun. I went to bed and kissed my wife like always, but when I closed my eyes, I woke up in a desert I didn't recognize. My head pounded, and when I looked around, I saw nothing but sand in every direction. I pushed myself up and walked for hours, but that's when my hand hit something plastic. A magic 8-ball with a sticker on the side that read, "The Ball of Lies."
"I'm the ball of truth."
The 8-ball suddenly spoke. I grabbed my head and asked desperately, "How do I get home?"
"Walk to the hill on your right."
I looked at the 2 sandy hills on either side of me. Then I looked at the sticker, "The Ball of Lies," and went left. The hill on my right literally exploded. Then I saw 2 roads. The ball told me,
"Take the left one."
I took the right one, and suddenly an avalanche started on the left road.
"Do not get in this man's car."
The ball spoke. Right then, a car pulled up, and a man offered me a ride home. I immediately said yes, crying with relief. We drove for 13 hours until we finally reached my address. I threw the door open and my wife hugged me in tears. "Where were you? I've been waiting for you all alone for days." Suddenly, the 8-ball spoke from my pocket.
She was indeed waiting all alone. No other men kept her company.
I was typing on my school laptop when the webcam light started blinking, even though the camera was turned off. I immediately covered it with my hand and thought back to yesterday when the principal had handed these out at school. "These laptops are completely free. Make sure to take them home." I waved at the lens and it blinked faster. I slid my chair back like the thing might bite me because someone had been watching me, but I rolled right back in and stared dead into the camera. "Whoever you are, I'm catching you red-handed." I taped over the lens and took it to school the next morning, but the principal pulled me out of class at lunch and took me to his office. "I know you've been damaging school property." He snatched my laptop and jabbed at the tape, but I jabbed back and asked, "How did you know the tape was there?" His face went red as he pushed me back. "That's none of your business. Don't damage school property from now on." He pulled the tape off and shoved the laptop back to me before kicking me out, but I was smiling ear to ear. That night, I sat in my bed and made sure the light was blinking again. Then I pretended to not notice the camera and said out loud, "I have proof that the principal is spying on us. It's hidden in my drawer, but I'll hand it over to the police tomorrow." Then I closed my laptop, called the cops for real, and told them a man was breaking into my house. A few minutes later, my window slid open. I was lying on the bed and kept my breathing slow as footsteps crossed my carpet. When I cracked an eye open, the principal was digging through my drawer. His flashlight swung straight onto my face, and my entire body locked up. I strangled my sheets as he stepped toward my bed, but that's when red and blue lights flooded my window, and 2 cops burst in through the door. They slammed him into my floor, and my fingers finally let go of the sheets. He got cuffed, screaming, "Those are my laptops! I have a right to use those cameras!" I sat up and waved at him from point blank. I promised I'd catch you red-handed, and that's exactly what I did. I watched Spider-Man for the first time and was convinced I could climb walls. I ran past my cat and straight to my pet spider's tank and stuck my hand in it, waiting for it to bite me. I was convinced it bit me and smiled because that's exactly what I needed. I'd begged my mom to buy me a Spider-Man suit, so I went into my closet and put it on. I pressed my hands flat against my bedroom wall. It didn't stick, but I wasn't worried. I was positive my powers were going to kick in soon. I waited a minute, then I opened my bedroom window and climbed out onto the roof. My hands gripped the shingles and I gasped. They were sticking. My powers kicked in. I started crawling across the roof on all fours like Spider-Man. But then I heard meowing from the tree next to my house. It was my cat. She was stuck on one of the highest branches. This was my first mission. I jumped from the roof onto the tree and started climbing. Branch by branch I got higher. The cat was right there, so I grabbed it with one arm. I felt like a hero. Then I heard my mom scream from below. "What are you doing in that tree?" I yelled back. "Mom, my spider bit me. I'm Spider-Man now." My mom shook her head. "Get down before you hurt yourself." But when I looked down, I felt pee come out. I was way higher than I thought, and if I fell, I would take serious damage. I tried to climb down, but realized I couldn't climb down and hold the cat at the same time. Then a branch under my foot cracked. I hugged the tree with one arm and the cat with the other. The branch snapped. I hit every branch on the way down and landed directly on my left arm. I heard it crack, and it bent the wrong way. I was screaming and crying in my Spider-Man suit, but the cat landed on my chest without a scratch, and she started purring on me. Mission complete. I was Spider-Man. When I came back from the hospital, my mom told me she released my pet spider in the wild. She pointed at my suit in the closet. I'm returning that suit too. Turns out I wasn't Spider-Man. I just had a really strong grip. My little brother creeped toward my bedroom carrying a live hornet's nest while wearing a full hazmat suit. I gasped because I knew he was trying to get revenge on me for yanking out his PS5 right before he got his first ever victory royale. But this was way too far, and I needed to stop him before he tried to murder me with hornets. I tiptoed after him, and he slipped inside, slid my closet door wide open, and set the nest on the shelf with a huge grin on his face. He stepped back and let out this muffled villain giggle behind the visor, like thinking about murdering me made him the happiest man in the world. I walked up and put one hand on my bedroom door, and he froze like a deer in headlights. I shut the door on him and his nest and held down on the handle so he couldn't escape. He pounded on the door. "Let me out! The suit won't protect me forever." I leaned in close. "I'll let you out if you agree that the prank war is over and carry that nest back to its tree where it came from." The buzzing got louder, and when I looked through the peephole, I saw a hornet land right on his visor, and his eyes went huge behind the plastic. "Okay, truce. The war's over. Let me out. Let me out." I breathed a sigh of relief and levered down the handle, and he stumbled out and immediately shut the door behind him, with his rubber gloves still on. He held out his arm. "Dude, come here and shake my hand." I walked towards him, and he stepped on my laces and tripped me up. I had my fingers crossed. War ain't over. I instantly put my hand on the handle and locked eyes with him. So were mine. I quickly pushed him back into the room and shut the door, just as the nest rolled off the shelf and split open on the floor. The last thing I saw was one hornet landing on his zipper and pulling it down. Every day my girlfriend would lay out her surgical toolkit of pliers, tweezers, and scalpels, then climb onto my head and start popping my pimples. Isn't that so satisfying? She'd shove the giant ball of white puss towards me with a smile. It felt like being stabbed, but I loved her, so I let her. But then one day she pressed her thumb into the giant birthmark on the side of my head. "I'm gonna pop it." She climbed on me with a set of tweezers, but I instantly shot back. "That's a birthmark. You can't pop it." But she reached for it. "Come on, it'll be fine." I gently pushed her back. I said no, this is too dangerous to pop. Her face dropped and her lip quivered. "Fine, but can I at least pop the others?" I said sure, and sat down. She squealed with this devious grin, and I chuckled as she climbed on my head, and for 5 minutes everything was normal. But then I felt a sharp pain on my birthmark. "Stacy, stop." I pulled away, but the pain on my birthmark somehow got worse. That's when I realized Stacy was clamping down on my birthmark with tweezers, squeezing so hard her knuckles were turning white. "It's almost out, just a bit more." She smiled and squeezed harder. The pain shot through me, and I grabbed her hand to get her to let go, but her face turned red. I said it's gonna be fine. She clamped the tweezers as hard as she could, and suddenly I heard a ripping sound. The birthmark fell off my head, and blood started pouring from my temple as it felt like I'd just been stabbed there. Stacy looked at the bloody birthmark that was now the couch, and her hands flew to her mouth. "Oh my God, why didn't you tell me this would happen? You know I'm squeamish." Her eyes rolled back and she fainted, crashing on the floor. I shook her, but she was fully out. robot. I covered the gushing hole in my head, then dialed 911, explaining to them my girlfriend just tore a birthmark off my head thinking it was a pimple. The robot I built to do my chores went rogue and was stalking me through my own house. It was programmed to eliminate everything dirty it found. I didn't realize that I hadn't taken a shower that day, and I was filthy from assembling all the parts. Now that mistake could cost me my life. The minute it came online, I became its prime target. There was nowhere to hide. The robot had my scent and was closing in slowly. I was cornered with no escape route. It raised its left arm. At the end was a brush with steel bristles. Eliminate mess by any means necessary. The steel brush began spinning with enough force to strip the skin from my bones. As the robot moved toward me, it knocked my grandmother's urn off a shelf. It shattered, and her ashes went everywhere. The robot immediately shifted focus. New target acquired. It used its other arm to vacuum the ashes. I took my opportunity and ran past it. Sorry, Grandma, but thanks for buying me some time. As I ran through the house, I knocked over every plant, plate, and vase I passed, making more mess to distract the robot. I was great at robotics, so the machine made quick work of it. I ran up to the bathroom and hid in the shower, but it wasn't long before it found me. I looked around. Nothing to grab but the handle to turn the shower on. I was cooked. Then an idea struck me like lightning. I threw the shower on. Cold water ran down my body, washing the dirt away with it. The robot stopped in its tracks. Target lost. It turned around in search of more mess, exposing the off switch on its back. I jumped out of the shower and threw the switch. The robot collapsed. I looked around my house. There was still a lot to clean up now, but after all of that, I was happy to do it myself. I slammed my fist on my birthday cake and rolled my wheelchair out of the house. I needed a breath of fresh air because I couldn't believe my family hadn't shown up to my birthday. But that's when I felt a pair of hands grab the back of my wheelchair and start pushing me down the empty sidewalk, away from home. I tried to look back to see who it was, but the man was wearing a hoodie that covered his face. I tried reaching back and weaved my hands. "What are you doing? Let me go." The man didn't respond and just continued to roll my wheelchair. My eyes started to fill with tears because I was sure I was being kidnapped on my birthday. A man I had never seen had taken full control of my wheelchair, and there was nothing I could do. He was leading me directly towards an empty building, but I wasn't going to just let him kidnap me without fighting back. I began breathing faster, looking left and right, trying to figure out what I could do to get out. And that's when I remembered I had a phone. I pulled it out of my pocket as fast as I could, but at that exact moment, the wheelchair hit a bump and the phone flew out of my hands. I was desperate to survive, so I grabbed the wheels with my bare hands. "Please just tell me what you want. My family doesn't have a lot of money." But he stayed completely silent and only pushed harder. My heart was hammering and my hands were shaking on the wheels as he pushed me into the building. He kicked the metal door open into total blackness, and I was sure I was about to vanish into it and never come back. The door banged shut behind us, and the lights slammed on all at once. A room packed with everyone I loved leaped up screaming happy birthday. My mom right in front holding a cake glowing with candles. It turned out that every minute I had spent thinking I was being kidnapped, my family had been planning to surprise me with a huge party. The man let go of my handles, pulled down his hoodie, and it was my uncle. "Happy birthday, kid. Sorry about the scenic route." My heart started pounding harder and harder, so I clutched my chest with both hands. Then everything started going dark. I fell out of my wheelchair and slammed my face right into the birthday cake. In the distance, I could hear my mom go, "Oh no, he's having a heart attack." I turned on my Xbox and grabbed my controller, ready to game all night, but then a window smashed behind me. I turned and saw a masked man with a neck tattoo climbing in, and my whole body instantly froze. "Mom!" My throat closed up from fear mid-scream, and when Mom rushed in, she went pale and threw her hands up. "Sir, take anything you want. Please don't hurt us." The masked man stared at her for a moment, then looked around the room, and his eyes settled on me. My heart pounded as he walked towards me with a grin. The pistol on his hip flashed, and I remember freezing in fear, thinking he was going to kidnap me. I mouthed at Mom, hit him with the lamp because his back was turned to her, but she was too scared to move. The man reached me, and his hand shot out. I closed my eyes, bracing for contact, but he reached past me and started shoving my Xbox into his bag. My stomach curled because that was my favorite thing in the world. I'd fought with Mom every day for weeks to convince her not to sell it, and he was taking it. I grabbed the man's arm. "Please no, sir. Take anything else." But Mom crossed the room and snatched my hand away. "I'm sorry, sir." Her voice shook. "Take what you want. Don't listen to my son." She glared at me. "Our safety is more important than your Xbox." She backed away, gripping my arm, and I watched the man grin and climb out through the broken window with my Xbox. I dropped to my knees, crying and still hyperventilating. I thought I was going to die and my Xbox was robbed, but that night I woke up from a nightmare about what happened when I heard Mom's voice outside. "Thank you so much." I didn't know how else to take that Xbox from him. I looked out, watched as Mom gave $100 to a man with the same neck tattoo from earlier. I realized she'd traumatized me with a fake robbery just to steal my Xbox from me so I couldn't game anymore. At least she doesn't know about the Nintendo Switch hidden under my bed. I put my hand over my little brother's mouth to keep keep him quiet. We were awoken in the middle of the night by the flash of emergency flares and the sounds of footsteps outside of our tent. We had no idea what was happening. The zipper at the front of the tent began to fall, and my brother screamed hard against my hand, but I was able to muffle it. When the flap opened, the full beam of a flashlight blinded us both. When our vision returned, we recognized the figures holding them almost immediately. It was our parents. "Get up." Their tone was pure panic. "There's no time to explain, we have to go now." I removed my hand from my brother's mouth and helped him up. Just then, we heard a noise that couldn't have been human. It sounded savage and primal, and worst of all, it sounded like it was 10 feet away and closing. We came out of our tent to see a 10-foot grizzly bear standing across the campfire from us. It was foaming at the mouth and moving unpredictably. "Great, it's rabid too." The rabid bear charged forward straight through the campfire, sending pieces of burning wood flying, and pinned my little brother to the ground. "Oh Jesus God, Caleb," my mother cried. "Son, look up." My dad pointed into the air just above the bear. Our family's camping supply crate hung suspended over a tree branch. This tactic was supposed to keep bears away, but it sure got this one's attention. "Hurry, do something!" My brother was using all of his strength to keep the bear's jaws from touching me. The crate was staked to the ground about 5 feet from where I lay. I knew I wouldn't make it to the rope in time myself, so I pulled out my pocket knife, opened the blade, and made the throw of my life. The blade grazed the side of the rope. It was tattered, but not broken. The bear's jaws were lowering on my brother's head. Without another thought, I grabbed a piece of burning wood the bear had scattered and hurled it at the weakened rope. A spark landed exactly on the last strand, and the whole thing snapped with the sound of a bullwhip. The heavy supply crate dropped straight down onto the bear's head and shattered into splinters. The bear was knocked out. Together we pushed the unconscious bear off of my brother. Then a searchlight lit us up, accompanied by the sound of a helicopter. A voice over a loudspeaker said, "Parks Department Rescue Division, we saw your flare. I'm dropping a ladder now, you folks will be all right." We were flown to the nearest hospital, and we would never return to that campsite again. I was standing next to my brother Otto at his wedding when he stepped up to the mic, unfolded a piece of paper, and started reading the vows I wrote for my fiancée. I had left that paper on the kitchen counter at my parents' house 2 weeks ago. Otto had been doing this my whole life. Every dream I ever had out loud became his next achievement. At the reception, I told my fiancée Julie those were my vows, and she was quiet for a long time. He just took them like they meant nothing. We postponed our wedding that night, but by the time we got home, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I called a friend in real estate about a house that looked perfect from the outside and was falling apart on the inside. Flooded basement, black mold, cracks running through the whole foundation. I started bringing it up at every family dinner for 3 weeks straight. Julie stopped coming to family dinners after the vow thing, so I sat at the table alone and thought about her sitting alone at home, and it made the performance very easy. One night, I put my head in my hands. I had to let it go. I just could not save enough in time. I pushed a fake mortgage document across the table and shook my head. I just hope nobody buys it before I can. Otto was already on his phone. 2 days later, my real estate friend called me. Otto scheduled an inspection on the house. I sat down on the kitchen floor and stared at the wall because I thought it was all over. Then my friend called back a few hours later. He canceled it so he could close faster. I exhaled for the first time all day. 2 days later, Otto texted me a photo of the house keys. "Looks like it was meant for me. You'll find something cheaper," I texted back. "Congrats. Hope it treats you well." He sent a laughing emoji. I put my phone down and went to tell Julie it was done. The first heavy rain of the season flooded his basement to the ceiling. Then cracks spread across the walls. Otto called me in tears. "The house is going to collapse if I don't find $20,000 for repairs." A few weeks later, I walked into my parents' house for dinner, and Otto was already at the kitchen table with red eyes. My wife left me. I sat down. "Why?" She said buying the house was stupid. 2 months later, Otto was sleeping in our parents' basement because he couldn't afford the repairs, and Julie and I finally got married. I wrote even better vows, and she had never heard any of them before. Her face when I started the first line was worth every dinner I had sat through alone. I started stealing as much as I could as soon as the bank guard walked away from the vault door. I quietly cracked open every deposit box I saw, filling my bag with cash and jewelry. This was a black market bank. Everything inside belonged to the worst drug traffickers and war criminals on the planet, so I had no problems with draining their accounts. I had almost cleared out the entire vault when I came to box number 13. I popped the lock. Inside was a piece of paper and a gun, but that wasn't all. The box was rigged. When I opened it, the vault slammed shut and I was trapped. I flipped on my night vision goggles. I had to think quickly. The getaway van was only going to wait for another 90 seconds before it took off. I looked at the piece of paper from inside the box. It was a note. "Nobody steals from me. If you're reading this, you're trapped, and the guards are on the way. I've left you a gun with 1 bullet inside in case you want to take the easy way out. Because I promise you, if I take you alive, your fate will be much worse." It was signed by the most brutal cartel boss in the country. Just then, I heard the footsteps of guards outside the vault, and the door started to open. 3 guards guards stood in front of me with their guns raised. The lone ceiling light outside the vault flickered one time, and I realized that there was only one way out for me. I reached for the gun in the box. The guards moved closer. "Hey, freeze! What do you think you're doing?" I raised the gun and said, taking the easy way out. I shot the light, and the room went pitch black. The guards stumbled around blindly. I flipped on my goggles and made quick work of all three. Once they were knocked out, I threw them in the vault and shut the door. I ran outside and made it to the getaway van at the exact moment it started to pull away. My 3-year-old ripped his hand out of mine and sprinted straight for the ocean. I immediately jumped up because I was too broke for swimming lessons, and he'd definitely drown. "Theo, get back here!" But a giant wave emerged from the ocean and crashed over him, and when it reeled back, he was gone. I frantically searched for anyone who could help us, but the beach was completely empty. I crashed into the water. "Theo, where are you?" I fought through waves that kept shoving me back toward the sand. I knew I didn't have much time until he'd drown, so I took a deep breath and dove in. But I couldn't find him, so I grabbed the phone I won from the His Story subscriber giveaway to call for help. But a pop-up came up on the screen. To find your son, every viewer has to click the like and subscribe button of this video. And when I opened my eyes, I could see a dolphin heading straight towards me. I rose back up to the surface and saw my son sitting on its back, laughing. "Look, Dad, the dolphins taught me how to catch fish." He held up 2 little fists stuffed with silver fish, grinning like he'd won something. "Now we can sell them so we don't have to be poor anymore." I stood there chest deep in the ocean and realized my baby was never drowning. He'd knew we were struggling with money, and he'd gone into the water to save our family the only way a 3-year-old could think of. The next morning, I sold his catch at the market, and I spent every dollar on swimming lessons. My son wrapped his arms around my neck. "You're the best daddy ever." I smiled. "Don't thank me. Thank His Story. It's because I subscribed to him, and you should too."
তুকো ওই কিং হ্যান্ডেল নিয়ে মাঠে যা যা যাস না।
আচ্ছা তুমি যাও না, খাউনটা বারো জানোস না, জানতে হইব তো। রিক্সাটা লো, সাইকেলটা লো বেটা আগে।
হবে না। আর আমি বুঝলাম না, এই দুনিয়াতে এত জায়গা থাকতে আমার বাড়ির
সময় আহুক, দেখবি মনের কথা সব ভরভর করে কয়ে দিব।
পাশাপাশি তো রাসেল ভাইকে বারান্দায় টিভি ভিসিআর আনছে, আমরা সবাই মিলে ওখানে সিনেমা দেখতে যেতেছি, আমিও ওই দিক যেতেছিলাম।
कभी कभी जीतने के लिए कुछ हारना भी पड़ता है।
বাচ্চা ভাই একদম ফাটাই দিচ্ছেন। সিনেমা আর কি দেখবো, আপনাকে দেখে মনে হচ্ছে চোখের সামনে শাহরুখ খান ডায়লগ দিচ্ছে।
तुम्ही तो कहा था कि तुम्हारे पापा के सामने ये एक
আম্মা ছাড়ো।
এই বাচ্চা বাচ্চা
ডন
এই বাচ্চা
কথা কইছো, আমি কিন্তু বাড়িতে ওই বন্ধ করে দিব, আমি জামুগা।
আব্বারে ও আব্বা তুকো ওই কিং হ্যান্ডেল নিয়ে মাঠে যা যা যাস না।
আচ্ছা তুমি যাও না, খাউনটা বারো।
শোনা,
ঘুরি। আমার নাম কিন্তু বাদশা, বুঝলেন না? হ্যাঁ,
আকাশটাও তালিবালি শুরু করছে। এই রোদ এই বৃষ্টি, কালকে কাপড় দিয়ে শুকায় নাই। আমি তো গাদার মতো খাঁটি।
बाजीगर कहते हैं।
বাজিগার कहते हैं। টাকা চুরি করছি তো কি হয়েছে? যে টাকা চুরি করছি তার ডাবল টাকা দিব তোমারে। এলো 500 নিছিলাম, এখানে কিং খান।
আব্বারে আব্বারে তুই বড় হইছিস না, ও নিজের পায়ে দাঁড়াইতে হইব। হ্যাঁ, আমি আর কয়দিন, আর তাছাড়া
প্যার হো।
দেখো ভাই, তোমার কথা কইলাম একদমই ভালো লাগলো না।
আমি তো আপনার ইচ্ছে করে ধাক্কা দিতে চাই
ওই দিনের ঘটনা তো আমি মনেই রাখি নাই, এর জন্য আপনার দুঃখিত হতে।
না। হ্যাঁ, নাম তো শুনো গা।
হ্যাঁ শুনছি জান।
বসেন।
ধন্যবাদ।
কি নাম?
আখি,
আসলে
হ্যাঁ, এখন যাই ঘুমা, আমার ঘুম পাইছে।
বলতে হইব না, আজকাল ফেল মারলাম।
जान से ज्यादा, জীবনের চেয়েও বেশি এই দিলে कुछ कुछ होता है। বাহ वाह 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 वाह, দেখো আমাদের সম্পর্ক থেকে এখন শাহরুখ বড় হয়ে গেছে। আমার কি ভয় হইতেছে জানো? হ্যাঁ, মানুষের জীবনে স্বপ্নে, কল্পনায়, ধ্যানে জ্ঞানে সব জায়গায় আপনি।
তোর মনের মধ্যে কি চলতেছে? তুই হইলে আমার সোনার টুকরো হো।
সাহায্য করো পার্টি সিলেক্ট করতে। আমি তো একটা অপশন নিয়ে আসছি। হ্যাঁ,
তার মানে আমার জমানো টাকা কই যায় এখন? কি বাড়ি কই?
প্রিয়া পাশে গ্রামে থাকে। একটা ইমেজ আছে।
এই বলো, তো কি এর ইমেজ? হ্যাঁ, সারাদিন সংসার যেরকম চা নাস্তাটা কইরা তাড়াতাড়ি ছাগলটা ভুল হয়েছে, ভুল করছে তোকে ওই কিং